So we finally got some new updates on Hell Let Loose Vietnam, and more importantly, actual footage and early impressions starting to come out from testing. Over the past few days, the developers at Team 17 have been sharing more details through their official blog, and alongside that, clips from the beta have been circulating as we've seen. It's still pretty early, but there's enough there now to get a proper sense of what this expansion is trying to do and where it might struggle. The first thing that stands out from the footage is how different the environments seem to feel compared to the base game. The dense jungle and tighter sightlines, the uneven terrain as well. It's a completely different kind of visibility compared to the wide open World War II maps that we are used to seeing. And I'll be honest, watching from some of these clips, it does look pretty intense. You're not scanning a horizon anymore, you're looking 10 meters ahead and hoping you spot someone moving before they see you. And that said, I think that same change is already raising a few concerns, as other people like Jack Frags have also pointed out in recent videos. I think with the lack of bullet flare and muzzle flash, it's going to be difficult to be seeing people in these environments, even more so than the World War II version, which is going to be potentially a bit of a problem, I think, for people. One of the most common reactions I've seen on Reddit over the past few days is, it looks great, but I can already tell I'm going to get shot from nowhere constantly. And I always felt like that on Hell Let Loose, the base game, so this is probably going to be a big concern going forward, and it might need to be made more apparent to people where people are actually getting shot from in terms of muzzle flash, etc. Because while the atmosphere does look spot on, there is a real possibility and question about this readability of the game. In a game like Hell Let Loose, where communication and positioning are going to be everything, visibility is going to matter a lot. And right now, from what people are seeing, it might be too easy to just disappear into the environment, into the bush. And I know that is very in keeping with the setting, which is fair, but there also needs to be an element of gameplay there where you can actually perceive people who are like 5 meters in front of you, which so far seems like it could be a big problem in these early stages, at least from what we've seen from the footage. Now, alongside that, the other big addition is helicopters. This is probably the most talked about feature from the recent footage. You've got these massive transport choppers moving squads around the map, which immediately changes how matches flow, basically completely from the base game. Instead of that slow, methodical kind of push across open ground, you've suddenly got the ability to be dropping players behind lines and reinforcing positions quickly, which is interesting. I think this is where things get really interesting for me, because it could either add a new layer of strategy and complexity, or it could just completely throw off the pacing and balance of the game if it's not properly balanced in general. And again, this is something people are already picking up on. A few more Reddit comments, like I spoke about before, said, helis look fun, but if they're too fast and too easy to use, it's going to feel like a completely different game, which I think is another risk. Obviously, they're going for this completely different setting, and that's valid, but obviously the core experience is what people are on Hell Let Loose for, and if you deviate too far from that, it could end up just feeling like a completely different game. And obviously, if people feel like that, then they may just stop playing Vietnam version of Hell Let Loose completely very quickly. So there is a balance to be struck here. Part of what makes Hell Let Loose so good is how deliberate everything feels. Movement has weight and decisions take time, which means introducing something as flexible as hot helicopters, it might end up debalancing the game and the feel of the game quite quickly. So it's something that I think they'll have to work on quite a lot in order to keep it balanced and feeling in keeping. I like the idea of it, and I think obviously it fits the setting, but it's one of those things that needs to be handled carefully. Now, beyond that, there are smaller details coming out through both the blog and the footage that we've seen. Things like the movement through water, which I think is a big plus and bonus, a very, very Vietnam feeling thing to be able to actually move through water and through rivers. Thicker terrain affecting how squads move, and a slightly faster overall pace compared to World War II maps. None of it feels completely out of place, but it does add up to something that's noticeably different, and I'm just not sure where the balance is going to come here between the original game and how they are trying to innovate and keep it more in keeping now with this more slightly faster paced Vietnam setting rather than the World War II setting. And I think that's where most of the current discussion is sitting. It's not just that people think it looks bad, it's actually quite the opposite. I think visually and atmospherically, it seems to be landing pretty well, especially from what I've seen on Reddit and from other YouTubers. If it is a little bit sepia coded from what people have said and a bit too orange in places, I think the atmosphere has been captured pretty well. It's more about whether it really feels like Hell Let Loose at all once you get through all these changes. If you look at Reddit over the past 24 hours or so, that's what I've been seeing mostly. People saying it looks incredible, but I hope it doesn't lose what makes Hell Let Loose what it actually is, which I think is a valid concern, because realistically, you don't want to deviate too much from that coding that made Hell Let Loose such a success and make it, I don't know, just a bit lacking in that balance and that flow, that feeling of that real slow, methodical tacticalness that makes Hell Let Loose so good. And the atmosphere, obviously, something else that's important to get right. One of the things that a lot of people have been saying from the footage as well is that it seems as though the foliage just doesn't really move or is not very interactive. The world in general seems quite static, so I hope that's something else that gets a bit more love and joy, because we're used to seeing, you know, moving foliage with helicopters flying overhead and these kinds of interactive versions of the environment that makes things so engaging and so atmospheric, as well as just the immersion in general. I think it's going to be really important to get right. I think this is probably the most important point out of everything so far, really, is this deviation potentially from the base game into this Vietnam version, because it's not just a new map pack, it's not a small update, it's going to be a completely different setting, completely different guns and mechanics layered on top of it as well. And those mechanics obviously need to be in keeping. On the YouTube side of things, creators have been breaking down the same footage, and as I said, the tone is pretty similar. There's a lot of interest in how the jungle changes engagements, including, you know, shorter fights, ambushes constantly, less long-range coordination. Some are even saying it might favour small squad play over large coordinated pushes because of how limited the visibility is, which would be quite a big change, as we've said, from how the base game plays, which is usually, when you're playing with a good team, a very coordinated effort. I've seen a few clips myself where entire squads just vanish into the environment right in front of you, and you genuinely can't tell where the shots are coming from, which is something that I mentioned earlier. I think this is going to be the biggest pain point going forward. It looks great from an immersion point of view, but it might be slightly stressful if you're constantly on the receiving end of dying from random bushes everywhere and you can't see anything. And there's also been some talk about the performance, which is worth mentioning. Dense environments like this can be demanding, and a few early impressions have hinted at some potential optimization issues. Hopefully these things will get sorted out before the release, but obviously from the early builds we have seen there are some issues with optimization, and obviously that horrible amount of motion blur that can be toggled off. After all, it was just bugged on for the build. Still, it's one of those things that can make or break an experience for many people. So, where does this leave everything right now? From what we've seen over the past couple of days, Hell Let Loose Vietnam does look like a genuine evolution of the game, rather than just an expansion. It is trying out some new ideas and potentially changing the pace, trying to push the game into a different biome and a completely different environment. And I think it's looking good overall so far, but there is a lot at stake here, and I think it could detract from the base game as well if this doesn't turn out to land like people think that it might. Obviously, people have been looking for Hell Let Loose in a fresh biome for a few years now, I think. And I think it is possible that this could turn out to be a very, very good version of Hell Let Loose, but there are obviously some key issues here and some concerns about deviating too far from the formula that makes Hell Let Loose so engaging and fun in general. But I think right now they're on the right track, and hopefully they can get things to land when the open beta drops over the next few weeks. As always, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate you very much. Please do like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.